Hey, Voodoo Power listeners. Before we start the show, let me tell you about Strength Coach Pro. Strength Coach Pro is the ultimate coaching companion for passionate strength coaches. Strength Coach Pro is a powerful platform allowing coaches to sequence programs for an entire year, ensuring athletes stay on track. It features a simple drag and drop design for program building. It's easy and efficient, allowing for customized workouts. Another great feature of Strength Coach Pro is the real-time leaderboard feedback. Athletes love competition, creating a fun, engaged, and motivated environment where they can thrive. Strength Coach Pro is trusted by coaches at all levels, from professional to D1, high school, and professional trainers looking for an easy way to streamline programming needs. Whether working with 10 clients or 1,000 athletes, there are no limits to the support of this program. In addition, there's a 14-day trial for coaches where they can explore the platform for themselves. At just $50 a month or $500 a year, the value is unbeatable. Please don't miss your opportunity. Coaches can reach out to Strength Coach Pro for a demo today. Let them work to save you time and elevate your coaching. Now on to the podcast.
Welcome to the Voodoo Power Podcast. Welcome to Plates of Pancakes. We're sitting down today with Cody Harvey. Coach Harvey is the speed and strength coordinator at China Spring ISD. On top of his duties in strength conditioning, Harvey is the head powerlifting coach, defensive backs coach, and off-season coordinator. Coach Harvey has a master's degree in exercise sports science from Hardin-Baylor University and served an internship at Stanford University. Harvey is National High School Strength Conditioning Coach certified. So welcome to the show, Coach.
Hey, thank you. I'm glad to be on. Thanks for having me.
Well, I'm glad to finally get down and do it. As busy as your schedule's been, we finally got some time to sit down and start going over some of these questions.
Absolutely. Spring can be crazy.
I'm sure it's the same for everybody. So
yes, sir.
That you carved out a little time, I'm super appreciative. Now, I developed some of these questions a while back, and we may go through them, and we may hit some new questions. But in listening to some of the stuff that you have out there, I kind of listen to you talk about developing pillars for success. While they're awesome on PowerPoint, how does that apply into application? So what are your pillars for success, and then how do you apply them in a way that athletes and students will gravitate towards them?
Yeah, our pillars is loaded. Each one of those letters is an acronym for a word. So L is love, O is ownership, A is accountability, D is determination, I is intentional, and T is team. And those are words that we talk about all the time. Each week we kind of have a word of the week, and the first start of the year, those are the first 6 words that we talk about. We talk about what they mean, and then we talk about how they can show those words in action. And that's really something we do. I think we do a good job of really trying to push. There's a lot of there's a lot of good people in the world, but there's also some mean folks, and we try to teach our kids how to really love each other. Not just love each other, but love the people in their community, love people around them, and it's okay to show emotion. Ownership. We live in a day and era where people want to put their problems and mistakes on other people. We talk about being a man and a woman. Like, you've got to own your mistakes, and it's going to happen. But if you own them, you can grow from those mistakes. A kind of goes along with ownership is accountability. We want to be accountable for their actions and accountable for each other and those things. And then D is determination. We want them to be determined to reach goals and have goals. And intentional is something we really, really preach. Like, we have some talented kids, but sometimes compared to the schools that we play, we're not, but we're still super successful. And I think our kids are super intentional with the way they go about their daily activities, whether it be in the weight room or in the classroom, standing behind certain lines and doing things to the standard that we expect. I think our kids do a really, really good job of that. And then team. We've had some really, really successful groups because they're really close-knit groups, and they play really, really well together. And I think that's kind of something that separates our program sometimes from others.
Now, as you're building these pillars and you're deciding what will eventually be the final product, how do you revisit, revise, edit, get rid of some pillars that may not be as effective as others? How do you keep that streamlined and decide what the best base to build on is?
When I first started, it was just load. Um, and when we started going through these things, like we talk about intentionality every day with our kids, from the beginning, as soon as they walk in the weight room or enter the weight room, to how they do the warm up, to how they do their stretches, how they do certain lifts. And I wanted to make sure that was um, something that was one of our pillars, because it is super important to us, and it's super important not just to our strength conditioning program, but to all of our athletic teams. And I think our coaches do a really good job of preaching that, and something that we want to keep going and carry on. So I would say the things that you preach about every day, those are your pillars. And you got to have something, a foundation for your program to stand on and lean on.
All right. Well, we can move on to some training stuff too. I knew I'd heard you talk about the pillars, and I wanted to at least make sure we touched on that. But
Yeah, absolutely.
off air, we talked about this a little bit. You're in your 5th season as the powerlifting coach.
Yes, sir.
Is that a Was that a passion of yours? How did you end up being the powerlifting coach? Just because you're the strength coach, or did more develop from that?
Yeah, I actually started out as the powerlifting coach before I became the street coach. And when we first started, I wouldn't say it was necessarily a passion of mine. I enjoyed lifting, um, but I enjoyed more the weightlifting side and the velocity of it and the speed of things, more than just the powerlifting. But I've really grown to like powerlifting because I've seen a lot of kids grow and mature um, from the success they've seen from powerlifting. Um, and I think that's why I enjoy it, because I like seeing the kids, when they hit a big lift and something they haven't done before, get excited and show the emotion they may not necessarily show on a daily basis.
Now, how do you plan out your season? I know me and Peter Noonan have talked about this, but I mean, there's an actual season, so you're going to meets and you're trying to move the needle all the time. I didn't ask, are your guys geared or raw?
We are geared.
Okay, so that may play into it a little bit more because the numbers could go up as they get more accustomed to the gear. But like anything else, track, whatever, how are you peaking for the end as opposed to burning through them athletes early on in the season?
Yeah, and I think that's hard too, because we're a smaller school, and so all of our kids play everything. So they're in powerlifting, they're in off season, and they're running track. Some of them running baseball, and so something I gotta really be careful of is the amount of volume that they're getting in powerlifting, because they're getting pulled in so many different directions. I kind of try to start out with volume relatively high, to kind of get them prepared, but that's more in the off season than necessarily in season of powerlifting. And so I really try to keep the intensities relatively about the same. I prefer to go to a meet every other week. I see that our kids do better when they don't go to a meet every week. And I think that kind of helps them from burning out, because they are pulled from everywhere. They're getting pulled to go play a baseball game. They're getting pulled to go run track. They're getting pulled in off season. They're getting pulled in basketball seasons and soccer. So I don't want to burn them in my sport, because a lot of times my sport is something that they do for fun and something they do to better themselves for, their primary sport. And so I do have a couple kids that powerlifting is their primary sport. And so I'm able to push them a little bit harder than I would necessarily a kid that's playing soccer and running track and doing powerlifting.
So how are you managing what they're lifting throughout the year? Is it almost event based? Like, let's say one week you're going every other week. One week you're going to push the squat and you're going for a squat PR and everything else kind of stays low. Or are you taking everything to the max all of the time?
Yeah. In practice, we're usually from 70 to 90%. 90% will be our heavier week. And we usually do the 90% the week they're not going to a meet. If they're going to a meet that week, they're usually 70 to 80%, because I know they're going to hit 100% at the meet. So I want them to know when we go to a meet, we're trying to PR and everything. But we're not doing that every week. You're doing that every other week instead of every week, because you are probably doing something else that coexists with powerlifting. So
Now, as I've watched like Noonan's team and some of those teams down there grow. And I use him as an example because me and him are friends and we talk quite a bit. But what I've noticed is the growth in the females in the sport.
Absolutely.
And they're doing amazing. So creating a space for the females to be successful in powerlifting and feel like the room's theirs and they can go and compete. How are you able to do that?
I think the biggest thing is the more time that they spend in the weight room, the more comfortable and confident they get in there. Most of the time, the girls that are nervous about going in are the ones that are just kind of first time setting foot in the weight room or haven't been there or aren't as accustomed to being in the weight room as much. And really, like, it's kind of word of mouth. Girls that spend time in there talk about how much they really enjoy it, and they kind of get some friends to join, and they kind of start enjoying it, and they start talking about it more, and then it just kind of spreads from there. I think when I first started, we didn't have any girls. Then the next year we had about 7 or 8. Next year we had a full team. Now we really could have 2 full teams. So I'm able to kind of say, hey, you're going to go this week, you're going to go next week, that type of thing. And so it's really grown and kind of taken off. And honestly, it sounds kind of crazy. I think a big turnoff in powerlifting is some of the things that you have to wear for girls. It's not necessarily the most feminine thing. And they don't want to wear that. And so I think that's kind of a turnoff to some of them, at least the ones I've spoken to.
You say that, but I think they're becoming more accepting of it. When you see the growth of female wrestling across the nation, which you're pretty much wearing the same thing, It seems like they've kind of been able to put that aside so that they could go and excel.
Yep, absolutely.
I am sure that every one of them athletes that has to put on a pair of volleyball shorts is not excited about that. So
I 100% agree with that.
They learn to make allowances, I'm sure. Now, what you were talking about there, you didn't have any females to start with, and then you get a couple, and then a couple more. I think there's a lot to be said for the groundbreakers and pioneers of the females that are willing to go in there and figure it out and set the tone. And I don't know that they get recognized enough for the program that they leave behind.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, more girls are ready to come in and experience that.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And, I would probably say I became the speed and strength coordinator about 4 years ago. And so we really started lifting the middle school girls then because they weren't lifting beforehand. And I think that's one of the reasons why we have more girls now too. They've spent more time in there. They feel more comfortable. So when they say it gets to powerlifting season, like, oh, I can do that. Like I lift every day. So I feel confident going in there and doing those types of things.
And I think this year I've noticed it more than years prior, but obviously I'm sure it's like you have a lot of athletes that follow you on Instagram that are your students or coming to the weight room, and you see more and more of the females like flexing in their prom dresses and very proud of how they look. And I don't know that you saw that before. I think they're understanding that they can look athletic and be strong, and it still is feminine. Absolutely.
I had a girl the other day. Coach Harvey, did you see my prom pictures? I'm like, no, I haven't seen them. She goes, after workout, I'll show you. And so that was one of her pictures. She was flexing. And she's like, I think that's from chin ups. I think that's from doing all those chin ups. So it's cool to see them get confident and be excited about, the work that they've put in.
I have one female that come out here and she doesn't play sports. Her boyfriend comes here, so she comes with him and she works out with him. So I guess to get a little skin in the game, what we did was we made prom a season. So just like volleyball or basketball or whatever, we chose prom as the event, and then we tried to, set her work up where she would feel the most comfortable in her prom dress.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool.
Now, moving from powerlifting into other sports, powerlifting may teach it more so than maybe some other sports, but taking the training wheels off and allowing appropriate failure in the weight room, in life. How do you decide when to kind of let some stuff go a little south just for a learning curve?
Yeah, and I think some of that starts in middle school a little bit. I think you have to teach them how to fail lift necessarily before you teach them the proper technique. So I think that's one of the first things that we do is like, hey, they start out with a goblet squat and then go to a hands free and then front squat. It's like, hey, if you are failing this front squat, Like you are going to dump the bar and you're going to go away from it. And I think it's important to teach them like, hey, it's okay from the jump. If you don't get it, like it's fine, but you got to learn how to protect yourself if something bad does happen. And I think that's the first place is teaching them how to fail and that it's okay to do so. Um, I think about end of freshman year, we really start kind of challenge their intensity and what they can do and put on the bar. We try to use VBT every time we're in the weight room. And I think that's a good kind of teaching tool for them. Like we give them a range every lift and say, hey, every time you do this, it needs to be between this range. And we have a sheet on the rack. If you got in the range, go to the green, it's going to tell you how much to put on the bar. If it is red, it's going to tell you how much you need to take off on the bar. That kind of gives the kids a good gauge of like, okay, for me to do this lift well, I'm going to have to move it at a certain speed. If not, I'm going to have to take the weight off, and boys are more susceptible to wanting to add weight and push themselves to failure is what I've kind of noticed. And girls aren't necessarily that way. Sometimes they are a little hesitant about putting more weight on the bar because they feel more comfortable doing that. And I think VBT helps with that. It's like, hey, you're moving the bar at this speed. Like you have a lot left in you to be able to add weight. And I think that's been a great teaching tool for them.
Now, there was a couple things in there, but you were talking about learning to fail. It kind of brought me back to Little League softball, Little League baseball. It seemed like for those hitters, if you teach them to wear a pitch early, how to get turned, how to take one, they'll be better batters in the long run because they know they can live through that.
Right. Absolutely.
And not die.
Yeah. You're going to be okay. Like you don't get the lift, you're going to put the bar down, we're going to get it back up, and we're going to move on from there. And we could be taking the weight off and you going at it again and not shying away from it, or it could be, hey, you're done for the day. This coming Monday, we have our Night of Champions, which is basically our testing day. We do it at night. We'll let all the parents come out and watch them, boys and girls. Like the girls will start in the weight room, guys will start out on the field, and they're going to flip. And that's a cool night for parents to see like, wow, my daughter or my son, they've put in a lot of work and they're really strong and those types of things. And there's going to be kids that fail lifts, and it's going to be cool, good for the parents to see like, hey, they failed the lift and she's okay or he's okay. And it's something I don't really need to necessarily worry about because they're being taken care of and they're doing it the right way.
Now, what do you test on that night?
So in the weight room, we test on front squat, bench, and chin ups. So that boys and girls will do all three of those. And then outside it'll be a 30 to 10 fly, broad jump, vertical jump, and 5-10-5. And we have rock daisy. And so we have we'll have award winners. So we'll have awards for bench based on body weight, front squat based on body weight, number of chin ups, momentum and power based off weight on vertical jump and broad jump. And so we'll have winners for boys and girls. And so a really cool night for our kids to kind of showcase all the effort they put in over the course of the year and kind of get to show off a little bit.
No, it sounds like it would be a really cool night. And then some parents know what they're doing in the weight room. Some parents just know they go. So
yep, absolutely.
This kind of breaks some of those barriers down as well.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Now, you were talking about VBT there a minute ago and staying in ranges, and boys want to go heavier, and sometimes you got to coax a girl into a little bit more. It kind of brings you back to a rabbit hole I've been down a little bit. Dane Miller gets deep into it, and something he took from Bondarchuk, but you're three kinds of athletes. You're Zen that are very methodical, and then you got that middle one in there that's kind of flaky, and then you got that last one in there that's kind of meathead. And they'll push for failure all the time.
Absolutely.
Do you kind of see that across the board? Are you able to kind of basket some of your athletes and then that will give you a more of an indication of what you're going to get performance-wise out of them? The kids that come in there and they're methodical, you're always going to get their best, but I'm starting to notice with them, they may actually get some anxiety at sport time because they are so analytical. Mm-hmm. Then you got your meatheads that'll go to failure all the time, and they're going to push through any obstacle. And then you got the ones in the middle that kind of find a reason to complain and find reasons why they're not getting better. Are you able to kind of group your athletes up and see what you have across the board?
Yeah. And something, I think that's coaching, right? You kind of see kids that kind of try to get out a little bit, kids that really push themselves, and the kids that do things the right way all the time. And honestly, we try to mix them up and group those kids kind of separately. So a kid that does things the right way, a kid that works hard, and a kid that may not, we try to put those kids together, and hopefully some of that rubs off on each of them, the kid that may not work as hard is put with a kid that does. And it's like, wow, I really have to step up if I want to be able to stay and lift with this group, because if not, like I'm going to get embarrassed, and I don't want to get embarrassed. And I think that's helped a lot of our kids, putting them with kids that do things the right way, and kind of follow our standards, holding each other accountable is one of them, and owning mistakes. And I think it's important for the kid that does things right to hold the kid that's not necessarily doing things right accountable, because he is his teammate. And our football head coach does a good job of talking about, teammates are stronger, been closer than friends, because friends you see in the hallway, you tell them good job, but you might have a bad game and they might be on you about it. Well, teammates, you've done a lot of things together. They've seen the good and bad in you, and they're still there, right there with you, and they're going to have your back. So we talk a lot about that, and we try to group our kids kind of that way for those reasons.
Talking about them there, I've noticed that in kids, they are quicker to correct each other than almost anybody else. They don't let a lot of stuff slide.
No, they don't.
That competitiveness in the weight room creates a whole different environment, and they'll plumb some stuff up quicker than maybe we could as coaches.
Yep, absolutely.
I know you use VBT. How are you setting your parameters? I don't really know exactly what program you run. So are you alternating the speed you're at? Or are you trying to hold kind of in the same speed all the time? How are you looking at what you want to do in each session?
Yeah, well, kind of our tier A is kind of our dynamic effort tier, our power tier, and our B is more of our strength tier. And I kind of give them a range and say, hey, it needs to stay within this range. And if it doesn't, or is it higher than that range, or is it lower? And if it's higher, they have a little chart, go to the green, and it's going to tell them how much they need to take off or out of the bar. If they're out of the range because it's too slow, they look at the red and it's going to tell them how much to take off. We have eNode, and so we're about probably 6 to 8 weeks in. And so we're about to just be able to use it on the iPads, and it's going to auto adjust for them. So let's say the speed range is 0.5 meters per second. They're moving the bar really well. Well, the iPad now with the eNode is going to tell them, hey, instead of having 175 pounds on the bar, you're moving it well. You can go to 185. And if that keeps moving well, it will auto adjust on the iPad, and it's going to tell them how much they need to put on the bar. So it's kind of taking that part out of my hands. Like, hey, you need to add weight, or you need to take the weight off, and it's going to auto adjust for them. And it kind of works the other way. If a kid's in season and the bar's not moving as well because they're tired, it's going to say, hey, bar's not moving well. You need to take some weight off, and they take the weight off for them. So I'm really excited for that. I think once we get more data this summer, once we get into season in the fall, it's going to work really well.
Now, this is something I've looked at harder over the course of the last year, but where are you running your dynamic days? Where are you running that speed at?
So you're talking about the VBT speed?
Yeah.
It honestly, it kind of depends on, what lift you're doing. If it's going to be like a bigger range of motion, the speed needs to be a little higher. If it's a smaller range of motion, the speed needs to be a little bit less. And honestly, it really does kind of depend on the movement. Typically, around 1.5 to 2 meters per second is what I kind of use for dynamic effort stuff on like jumps. 0.9 meters per second is kind of I don't want to say kind of the holy grail for power movements and power speed. And
then on your strength tier, how low will you let them get? I mean, a deadlift, a kid can grind out of under a 2, under a point, under a 0.2. How low will you let that get before you're like, okay, you're out of parameters?
About usually it's 0.3. On bench, I kind of go 0.25. Like I watched some kids today, and the lift looked pretty good, and it was smooth. It was just slower because he was closer to his 1RM, and he would finish at 0.25. So I think it's a little lower in a movement that the bar is not moving as far. So probably 0.3 for like a squat or deadlift, and then 0.25 for bench.
And do the parameters change male to female, or are you running in that same percentage for both?
That's kind of a thing I put on social media today because I have kind of started noticing that like the girls don't move the bar quite as fast. And so I'm not done with it yet, but I'm kind of making a chart that's more female oriented and one that's more male oriented because there is a little bit of a difference. The girls do move it a little bit slower.
All right, so we can dig down into that rabbit hole a little bit because that's interesting. Do you notice going across that maybe their maximal numbers aren't as good and that's why they can't move the bar as fast? So if their strength, kind of getting in that DB Hammer idea, if their strength is better, can they move the bar faster, do you think?
Not necessarily because there's some girls that may be stronger, but they just don't have the fast twitch to be able to move it faster. They're just not capable of doing it. And so I think the speed needs to be a little bit lower. But it right now, I'm curious to see if anybody else has any data on it because I'd like to look at it because it's just something that I've noticed, and I'm sure some other coaches noticed it too. I'm interested to see if any other coaches have anything on it because there is a little bit of a difference. Like a girl that benches, say, 100 pounds, she can move 70 pounds really, really easy. But as soon as it gets to 80 pounds, it's like sometimes she can barely move it because that range is so big, that gap is so big for him. Where compared to a guy that benches 225, he can bench 185 fairly easy. And so it is a little different when those numbers are a little bit lower, and the speed is not moving quite as fast. So I'd be interested to look at it.
Yeah, that would be something to see too, because I noticed it takes a pretty strong kid to move a really light load fast.
Yeah, it does.
To especially when you start getting into body weight. Let's say you want to start moving body weight at, 1.1, 1.2 meters per second. It's going to take a super explosive athlete to do that with a very, very big strength base. So I didn't know if girls showed that in there as well.
Like I have a girl that's pretty. She was one of my better powerlifters. I think she finished 4th or 5th at the regional powerlifting meet. Like she's a strong girl, and like I'm trying to get her to reach certain levels on squat, and the weight is light for her. Like it's probably 50% of her max, and she just can't hit it. Like she just can't hit the speed, and I just don't think she's like if I go watch her run, like it has a correlation because she doesn't run necessarily great. And I just don't think she is fast twitch enough to be able to do it.
And that's where I had kind of moved away from some of the really fast speeds because I didn't, especially out of season, I didn't notice it moving the dial as much as a little bit higher up the ramp. So let's say we'll run our squat now at 0.6 meters per second for 3 reps.
Yes.
We got down in there those faster speeds, but it seems like it kind of stalled out. And now as we move up with intensity and get closer to the peak of a season, we'll let them speeds get back up there. But that was a question that I've kind of been working through myself. So to be able to talk to a guy about it that's kind of doing the same thing is pretty nice.
It's cool to kind of see there are people like kind of using trial and error. Like, I don't really see this, or I do see this, but it's kind of cool to hear some different ideas and how people are doing it.
Well, and that's also what has me down this Poliquin rabbit hole of your twitchy to your strength athletes. So I have quite a few shot putters. So now we're looking at what potentiates the shot the best that week for the athlete to go through a PR. If they're a strength athlete, maybe he should be throwing a 16. But maybe if they're a twitchy athlete, they should be throwing a 4 kilogram. So I don't know. I don't know if there's any merit to that or not, but I almost wonder if it's the same if you can start identifying your twitchy kids from your strength kids through how they move, what the speed of the bar does.
Yeah, absolutely. That'd be very interesting to see and kind of test out. And I think a lot of things as a coach is trial and error and figuring out, okay, this has really worked for kids. This really hasn't. And is there a way to split the kids up? Like you said, like is there a twitchy athlete or more of a strength athlete and potentiate them a different way than another one?
Yeah, and the hard part is figuring out what to post, what to ask, so you don't look like a complete idiot.
Yes.
Trying to get the answers you need without coming off on social media like just
Like desperate, like I need some help. Yeah.
exactly. So I know on top of VBT, me and you had talked, and you've gotten down the GPS rabbit hole quite a bit too.
Mm-hmm.
How much are you using that? Are you using that on a couple of athletes? Are you using that on a wide range of athletes? How are you picking who to put it on, and what are you watching? Are you watching for max speed? Are you watching for total accumulation? Where are you at with that?
Kind of a little bit. So we have 20 GPSs. With football, we basically had 10 offense, 10 defense, or basically our starters, basically. I kind of broke them up by position. And I have basically a giant Google sheet of broken down by position group. And I have game day average um, and basically the things that we want to look at, right? So we want to look at top speed, we want to look at XLs, decels, total volume, inertial load, GPS load, and I break it up by position. So it's basically, if it's green, we hit that during practice. If it was red, we were way over, or if it was yellow, we were too low. And so after each practice, I upload the info and share it with our head coach and our position coaches. So our position coach, let's say the running backs, hey, our running back, his volume was way too much. He's in the red. All he has to know is color, like red too much. So, hey, next practice, I got to level that back on my individual drills to be able to meet that. Or if it was yellow, hey, I need to add a little bit more volume during practice on that day to be able to reach where we want to. So kind of got those parameters from our coach. So, Monday is 70% of a game day average. Tuesday's like 85, and then we taper back down. So it's like 70 on Wednesday, and then like 60 on Thursday. And then obviously Friday's our game day with football. And so each day our coach just get their info and figure out, how they can adjust their practice according to what we want for those days.
Now, I understand adjusting practice for the volume that's being acquired and adjusting, but how much is GPS being used for coaching decisions? Sometimes we can't get over our own bias. So now you're looking at the records, and you have a defensive back, and he's touching top speed way more than any other defensive back.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe he's getting beat more. Do you start looking at, okay, what can we do here? Is it a technique? Is he just not seeing the game? Is he not seeing the field? Is he just not that good? How does GPS play in some of those instances? And the other one I was thinking of was, okay, that you got GPS on a linebacker, you got him on a blitz on that play. You're looking, it took him 2.3 seconds to get from his spot, the linebacker spot, to get to the quarterback. Well, now as you're researching other teams, that the next quarterback you're playing, he's releasing the ball at 1.8. Even with the blitz, you're not getting to him with that linebacker. So now you can start building this whole program of, in this situation, we need to use this guy.
Yeah.
Is that being done?
I don't think we can really do it at our level, because I don't think we have enough depth at our level to be able to do that. I think some of that is more of a technical and tactical side of the game, and I think that's kind of a position coach type thing. Like, hey, we can't run this coverage because this kid's not fast enough to cover this kid. And I think really good coaches can see that without having the GPS. And I think what we use GPS for is more of, hey, the volume, or even in the intensity of practice. Like, hey, practice wasn't intense enough. So like last year, we ran our sprints on Wednesday to make sure we were still hitting top speed, even with our linemen, D linemen during the course of the season. And our GPS load and our inertial load and stuff were way higher on Wednesday. And that's the day we're trying to pull back on practice. And so this season, I was talking to our head coach this week, like, we're going to sprint on Tuesday. We want Tuesday to be our hard practice for the week. So we're moving our sprints to Tuesday, and we're going to do all of our hard things on Tuesday to make sure that load goes up and we can start tapering down towards the end of the week.
That brings up an interesting question. So yeah, you're looking across the board as the season progresses, and you can see what buckets are getting filled. You kind of touched on that. So you can see how much exposure your lineman is getting the top speed, but then you can also see how much exposure, top speed, your defensive backs, your receivers are getting. So then you can start adjusting and maybe pull your guys that are touching top speed too much back into acceleration, and maybe your guys that are in acceleration for a long time up in the top speed. Is that kind of how that's working out?
Yes. And we also use it for, obviously, to fill those buckets, but we also use it for more of a readiness thing. We can see, hey, this kid's normal average is 21 miles an hour. He's hitting 19. Like, one, we have too much volume in practice, or two, is he hurt? Is he tired? Is he not sleeping? And I can go input that data, and then we can start talking those conversations with him. Like, hey, what's going on? He goes, it could be, coach, my hip's really bothering me. And like, you need to go see the trainer. Like, we need to get you healthy because we play in 3 days or whatever it might be. And so it kind of starts those conversations, or even the coach figuring like, I got to cut back a little bit because my kids are tired.
I know you have a speed development program. So through GPS, are you seeing an increase in overall average speed? Or
Yeah.
I didn't know. Yeah, I didn't know how that dictates how you're changing your speed development program.
Yeah, and we tweak it. We make adjustments and figure out new things and see different things. Like, let's try this, and we've seen a huge growth. I'm excited for Night of Champions to just see where we finish. Over the course of the season, over the year, we got Rock Daisy, I think, in 2023, and so our head coach, like, man, some of these kids look so much faster. So we started pulling up some data from when they first started. There's kids that are running 2.5 miles an hour faster than they did a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. And some of that's maturity and some of that's puberty and that kind of stuff. But like, that's a huge difference. So it's really cool to see the kind of the growth in kids, and when they really start developing and taking pride. Obviously, some that's taking pride in their training and want to excel and being intentional about those things.
And that's what I remember from growing up and watching, and then seeing some of these athletes. That maturity in there it's such a hard thing to overcome. You take a kid that's really growing and he's got growing pains and he just can't run. He can't move. It doesn't matter what your speed development is until he gets through that period of his life.
Yep.
They're just kind of stuck.
They are.
So, and you're waiting. Yeah, you're waiting on them to blossom into this athlete that you think they were pre-growth,
Yep. You're absolutely right.
Now, I know I've been listening to some stuff about this, and I got my own opinions on it, and we worked through it. But eccentrics, gain speed, working through fast eccentrics, slow eccentrics, are you mixing it like a triphasic? How are you working through the eccentric side of your lifts?
I've kind of done both. I've done, the blocks where it's, hey, we're going to do 2 to 3 weeks of eccentrics, 2 to 3 weeks of isos, 2 to 3 weeks of concentrics. I don't know if that's necessarily enough time for each thing. So like, this offseason was a little different. We did probably 12 to 15 weeks of eccentrics. But each 3 to 4 weeks was a different kind of phase. Like, some of it was slow eccentrics, and the very start of it was some isos, and then we went to slow eccentrics, then went to heavy slow eccentrics, then we went to overload eccentrics. Now we're kind of on our cycle of fast eccentrics, kind of starting to taper to get ready for our Night of Champions. And we still have baseball that's in the playoffs, softball's in the playoffs. We just had a girl finish the state track meet, and like kind of peaking those kids to getting ready for their events.
All right, so looking at that, as you're looking across the board, you have speed development and everything going on at the same time as you're working through your isos, you're working through your eccentrics. Are you able to see what is potentiating the biggest growth, so that when it is time to peak, like you're talking now, peaking for track, peaking for Night of Champions, you can insert that in right prior to that? Let's say, it's overspeed eccentrics is what's going to potentiate you the most. Let's say that's what it is. So you'll pull that and you'll hold that back until you're ready to get close to peaking, and then you'll put them in. Is that something you're looking at?
Yes. And well, honestly, one of the biggest things I've seen is overcoming ISO pulls. And we don't have necessarily everything we need, but we have a hex bar. They put the hex bar underneath the cups, move the cups down, and they pull into those cups for, we started out with like 5 seconds, and now it's a cluster. They do 6 seconds, they rest 10 and do another 6 seconds. And we've seen some huge gains when we start peaking with that.
All right, let's get back to powerlifting with that one then,
Okay.
because I'm a big fan. And Josh Bryant kind of helped me understand this. You can use those and not acquire as much volume in the warm-up room to allow your athletes to hit more on the podium. Have you noticed that, or do you use that to kind of help?
You know, it's funny you say that. I haven't really used it for powerlifting. No, I've used ISOs for certain lifts, but I haven't used overcoming ISOs. And so that might be something interesting to even try with my powerlifters, because I haven't done that. It's been more, power and speed athletes than powerlifters.
I found like if I go to lift and I'm coaching at the same time, well, I'm going to have to warm up with the first group, because then I'm going to get caught out the podium running numbers, wrapping knees, whatever.
Right.
So then what I would have to start doing was run back to the warm-up room and just hit an ISO and then come out and hit my lift. And I didn't know if you'd utilize that some. The guys that I have seem to really like that. So, and when you had mentioned that, I'm like, we're down the same rabbit hole with that.
Yeah.
Sure. We've went through quite a bit of this stuff, so we'll kind of bring this thing back around here, but
Okay.
Helping leaders handle pressure.
Yep.
I'm working through the book Grit, and it's really interesting to me. You can have all the talent in the world, you can have every attribute you need, but if you're not willing to persevere and work hard, you have nothing. So creating leaders and not taking that work ethic out of them, letting that grow while they're able to bring up other players. How are you able to do that?
I think there's a multitude of things. We have something that we call E3, which is energy, effort, enthusiasm. Some teams call it a boot camp. I don't like using that word, so we call it E3. And I think that's one of the biggest places we see kind of that grit, growth, and leadership kind of step up. We put them in teams, and they kind of select the teams, honestly. So kids kind of see like, hey, this is what my peers kind of think of me. Each team has group leaders, and end of the day, they do go through all 5 stations. We call those leaders up. We tell the leader, hey, Johnny, Steven, and Sam, they cost you your group. So they have to go to their group and tell Johnny, Steven, Sam, like, hey, you cost our group because you did X, Y, Z. And it's really, really hard for kids to tell their peers, in front of other people, like, hey, you messed up. Because they want to talk through Snapchat. They want to talk through text message. And having that face-to-face conversation is really, really hard and uncomfortable for them. And it kind of forces them to do that. But they start respecting each other. They start respecting it and doing it in a nice and kind way. Like, hey, I need you. Like, I need you to step up, and we need you to step up as a team. And I think we've seen a lot of growth in leadership with that. I think some of it's talking in the weight room. Like when we do our eccentrics or whether it be chin-ups, like I count, kind of want to get us going. And then I call, hey, Steven, you're going to come count. They got to count and address the room. And, when they first start, they're like 1, 2, 3. It's like, no, like you got to stand up, be vocal, and the whole room has to hear you. And I think that kind of makes them have to step up and lead. And sometimes it's really hard and uncomfortable because they're now in control of 80 people in the weight room by themselves. And so I think putting them in those situations to make them uncomfortable, make them have to do it, because that's not something they have to do on a normal day. I have a buddy that is a sales rep, and that's one of the things that he sees, that kids that he's hiring now, that they have a hard time handling conflict. When someone tells them, the boss tells them like, hey, you got to fix this, they think it's an attack, when it's really someone just trying to coach them and make them better. And I think that E3, that component of it really, really helps our kids.
Well, I know you're doing great things down there. We had a little trouble getting on schedule with everything we both have going on, but I appreciate you taking time today to sit down and talk about all the things you're doing at China Spring.
Well, I appreciate you. Thank you for having me on. It was awesome experience.
Well, I'm glad we were able to do it, man. And anything come up this summer and you start working on some awesome stuff that you want to talk about, shoot me a text and we'll do this again.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right, man. Have a great day.
Yes, sir. You too. Have a great day.